It's 7 o'clock. Call to order, August 17th, Board of Supervisors meeting. Stand for pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, the consent agenda. Do I have any forward?
Yes, I would like to pull out the Chester County Real Estate Tax Collection. That's it.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item F.
Second.
Is there any public comment? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it.
I think we should go for
Yes. Moving on to our board motions, presentations and resolutions. The first part is a very exciting part. It's the appointment of our chief of police. And
Yeah, so Mike Stetcher, he's been here a couple of decades. He's had every job but one. And we think that's about to change tonight. So procedurally, the board make a motion to appoint chief. The judge is here to swear him in. Then after that, I think it's applause and accolades, right? Procedurally, that works.
That's right. And it's a motion to appoint Lieutenant Sesher as chief, and including the MOU, which outlines the responsibilities which the board will consent to.
so
Second lieutenant or assistant chief?
He's a deputy.
That's right. I'm stating his last permanent formal title.
second.
Second.
Other board comment?
It's been a pleasure getting to know Mike in the last several years that I've been on the board. So I just want to make sure, he's been a great servant to the community. He's going to be great in this role.
Yeah, and when I had a chance to talk to Mike for this position, one of the things that really stood out was his commitment to the community and things he said about the relationship between police and the community. So I thought that was very important. So we're excited to have you. Do I have any public comment? Okay, sorry. Mike,
I got 30 pages. I want to go. Okay. So I've known Mike since I've been on the board, and it's a privilege to be here tonight to appoint him as the police chief. And it's a great thing for not only Mike, but for the residents of Easttown and the police department. And I want to thank his family, because being a law enforcement officer takes a lot from your family. So he didn't get here without a strong family that really helped him along the way. And I believe I really had a fantastic relationship with Mike. And whenever whenever I'm done talking to him or stepping away, I'm always impressed by everything we've talked about, by his caliber, who he is not only as a police officer, but as a person. I want to make sure I cover everything. And he's always been generous with his time, right? And again, that's back to his family. But he keeps us informed about what's going on. He, whenever I ask him to see something or to understand something, he's always there, willing and helpful to get through that. So Mike's impact on the township extends beyond just being an officer in our township. He was on a federal task force, which brought incredible training back, incredible relationships back to the township, and the forfeiture money through the cases that he worked on. So he's brought an incredible amount of stuff to the township through not only that, but everything he's done. And so Mike's, I think, as you guys mentioned, he's not just focused on policing and the technology of policing, but also the relationship to the community, which is great. That's what we need. We need a police force that relates to our community and is part of the community and makes our community better. So I did want to say that Yellow Office is here tonight. You're already a great team. Our previous chief, make sure of that. But you're getting a great leader to go forward in. So I look forward to that. So we got a great leader in our department. The township has a great police chief. That's what we're having here. And I would ask the criminals to just leave. Thank you, Mike, for everything you've done, everything you're gonna do. I really appreciate it.
So, any public comment?
Thank you, Betsy Fadden. For as long as I've known Mike, there's nothing too big or too small. And I think it is remarkable that we're able to hire from within and continue the legacy and the culture that the chiefs before have brought. So thank you and good luck to you.
Any other public comment?
Alan Gray, I've worked for the township. I've only been here a couple of years and getting to know, Sesh has been great. I think it is commendable that you learn every aspect of the position, and to be a good leader, you have the people want to follow you and want to show up to work and want to work hard for you. And I see that in Sesh. And these are the local heroes, right? Like, these are the people you want to support and you want to praise, and you could not ask for a better chief of police. Congratulations.
Hey, Larry, thank you.
It was per word too.
Is there any other public?
Yeah, Mark Happy, known Mike for 15+ years. He's been a great member of the police force, and I'm excited to see him rise to the top. I think of a better person to fill that position. And I really like the fact that he is very community minded. He's shown up for all of our events throughout the summer, and puts a face to the police force after the township residents, and I think that's really important. All the rest to you, Mike.
Thank you, Mark.
Share. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Congratulations. Right, swearing in.
Yes, please.
Do you want to switch so you're more natural?
All good. We'll make it.
Are you ready to take the oath of office?
Aye.
Please repeat after me. I, James Michael Sesher,
I, James Michael Sutter,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will enforce the laws of this Commonwealth
and I will enforce the laws of this Commonwealth
and the ordinances of East Town Township,
and the ordinances of East Town Town.
and that I will discharge the duties of police officer,
And I will, I'm sorry, what was that?
discharge the duties of police
I
officer
will discharge the duties of police officer
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
I do further swear
I do further swear
that I will uphold, obey, and enforce
I will uphold and obey and enforce
all these laws
all these laws
without consideration to a person's race,
without considerations to a person's race,
color,
color,
sex,
sex,
religious creed,
religious creed,
sexual orientation,
sexual orientation,
age,
age,
national origin,
national origin,
ancestry,
ancestry,
handicap, or disability.
handicap, or disability.
Congratulations, Chief.
Peter?
Thank you.
I didn't think we go from.
Not done yet, Mike.
I'm printing three. I don't know. Does the township need a copy to report?
Yes,
So the
please.
township, okay, so we'll just do all three. Now you're. Welcome.
Congratulations, Mike. Thanks.
Congratulations, brother-in-law. So proud of you.
That's pretty good. Huh? So basic.
Congratulations. This is all.
You can have a little dance competition. We got a dance floor, we got room.
Yeah.
See.
Can't stay up or
Well,
We got seats. We got it.
I'm doing just fine.
Say hi.
Okay.
My brother.
Hey, let's see it. Once she first. Yeah. Where we get stuff.
But you should be. I know, Andrew.
What's the eight time? Just a still a little bit of yeah. How are you? We got you. Pretty bad. But they can go. Just.
Okay, also on the, next up on the agenda is the U-shaped corridor sidewalk construction
I'm
contract.
gonna do the Chester County real estate tax collection.
Oh, you want to go back? Okay, we can go to F. We can do that now. Okay, next up is, Chester County real estate tax collection.
So we have been for a while now, not that long, but for a while. One of their goals is every time if you use a system like Quicken to submit your thing, you have to pay them to account. Your rule. And it just throws a loop every year. Because I have to bring a new account, it's a separate thing. And I don't know if they have an archaic system, I don't understand it, because, you know, Keystone doesn't require that, Keystone will pay real estate taxes to your school district, doesn't it? So they should, there's no technical reason why they require it, they just, they just do. So I would really like, I would move to Keystone or get them to stop having this requirement. It's, you know, on the one hand, it's, it annoys me, but on the other hand, it seems like they have an archaic system.
Do you repeat that? It's, what are they doing? I didn't get it first time.
They need you have to use a separate. But when you submit bills to like reckoning stuff, part of it is the account number. So you have to get a new account number each year. Yeah, just like what most, I shouldn't say most, everybody else, I just put in the memo, voice number and pay it, and they're good. For some reason, they don't like that. Yeah. And I've had trouble with it, like if I don't create the new account, because we have two bills, right, the Chester County bill and the East Town bill, if I don't break they reject the money and send it back. Then I pay it late.
Do we even have an option to change this?
Yeah. We used to do it ourselves, and then maybe 10 years ago or so, we switched to using Chester County.
You have an option, but the transition and ramp up is significant. There's certainly no problem with bringing that to the county's attention in terms of your dissatisfaction as a township, some of the technologies. That respectfully, maybe a better option, maybe you're gonna head into the last quarter. Obviously, decisions up to the board, but that transition, if you were to change versus and with a professional service like that, you're not required to, but I think your history is to do an RFP and see who else is out there. To provide that kind of service, because the problem with mistakes are very great. Right, if there's a glitch in the transition.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking about this earlier today. Like, there's nothing between us and Chester County. If like 3 houses fell off the rolls, right? Then they weren't getting the bills and they weren't paying the bills and nobody noticed. There's nothing in place to stop them to fix that, right? Whereas a company like Keystone and a for-profit has a much more incentive to fix those kind of things, address. There could be some outside benefit.
Yeah. And just from my perspective, I don't think you're in a position to make a change for 27, but if you wanted to make a change, you would go through some kind of procedure. We would start with an analysis. And my wife agrees that'd be tough to do for this year, but it doesn't mean you can't do it for next year. There's some sort of
Contact them to talk about that issue.
so it sounds fine. So you'll just communicate to me what the technical nature of your concern is, and we'll find the entity there to see what response we have.
I am not doing it again this year. I'm sending them the money the way I normally send it to everybody else. And we'll see what happens.
I do think it's best that you authorize us to initiate this, because we want to initiate it now so that we're ready. And it almost won't matter because it'll still come in at the last minute, but we want to initiate our part.
No, I'm not good with it. I think we should change, but if you guys don't want, I can understand why people would.
Well, if you're opposed to it, we wouldn't be able to
We
pass it
can't
tonight.
pass it because we need 3. Was Susan on?
Yes.
I am.
Susan, you there?
Yes, I am. I am on. Can you hear me? My audio is on.
She's up at the.
Oh, there it is.
I can hear you.
You can come back next month if you want. Arguably from my perspective, it's very procedural. If you want to change, the change would be later.
Okay. Then why are we bringing? I mean, I don't want to get antagonistic about this. Why are we bringing it up now? We can't do anything about it. Why is it showing up for us to do it?
Yeah, we're bringing it up now because you have an annual agreement that requires us to communicate to them that you want to extend the annual agreement. And I always want to bring these things with you with adequate time so that you can object to them if you choose to object to them. And the annual nature of the agreement is, if anything, you approved the annual nature of the agreement last year. So you're on a year-to-year lease arrangement.
So I'm bringing my object.
Yeah.
Susan, you understand that?
I did not. I did not understand it.
Can't hear.
I can hear. Same system. Can you hear me now?
Can't tell if she's on mute. Or just having problems.
I don't think it's on our end, I think it's on there.
Yeah.
She looks like she's
Can you hear me at all?
She is on a tiny island. Oh, big island.
Yes.
Big island.
Susan, can you hear us?
Do you hear us, Susan?
I can hear you and it looks like my audio is working.
If you can hear us, can you give us a thumbs up? She can't hear us. Okay. So if you're not going to
I
approve,
don't know.
we can bring it back.
They don't
That's
hear me.
fine, yeah, so we have, so we, it's all. So I'll bring it back in September.
Okay. Fair. All right, let's move on. Moving on to U-shaped corridor sidewalk construction
You done?
contract award.
All right, I'll let Colleen introduce you to this and give you the snapshot of where you are.
Sure. So we had the bid opening last week for the U-shaped corridor, project in the village. We received 4 bids ranging from approximately $548,000 to $939,000. The paperwork was vetted from Carroll Engineering, and they provided a letter recommending award to G&B Construction Group. This is the same contractor that did the work along Waterville from Berkeley to Route 30. Yeah. I worked with them in the past. They're a good contractor. So tonight we are asking the board to pass a motion to award the contract to G&B Construction.
How was our experience with them on the Waterloo project?
Yeah.
Good.
I thought I wasn't highly involved. That was John, but I've worked with them in the past and I've had no problems.
Time to communication.
We had mixed results, unfortunately. I think they got better towards the end. But it seems like they bid off a lot. They bid on a whole bunch of contracts that some of these new startups do. And they take a little while to ramp up. We're seeing they would get better staff.
Are you comfortable with?
I'll defer to Carol on this.
And then there's an element that it's not a question of whether you're comfortable or not, it's a question of whether it's lawful. So what is incumbent upon us is to press it to satisfaction. So it isn't, we get to choose somebody else. It's incumbent upon us to press it to satisfaction. So we will press it to satisfaction. If it can't be satisfied, we'll know you'll be the first person.
And I always ask this question with bids because I'm always confused by the rules. Are we required to accept the lowest price acceptable bid, or are we allowed to?
There are 2 components. One is the lowest responsive bid, meaning mathematically. The other piece is lowest response bid. And so that if a board is going to decide not to take the lowest bid, cases say there usually has to be some factual finding of the reason that the bidder has shown a history of not being responsible, not being able to complete contracts.
Yeah.
I do think I am aware that there were some ups and downs with this contractor, but I think from a legal standard, it's a squeaky wheel issue for the township, because the it is clearly $65,000 on the overall is the lowest. So unless there's a suggestion from staff that this bidder is not qualified, sort of have those before.
And it's not so much lower that it's suspicious. It's at least the 1, 2, and 3 are within a tightish band of around $100,000 each. So it's believable. I think we would have a hard time with justification saying that that it's a non-acceptable bid unless there's additional information. So I would be fine with proceeding with it.
And for purposes of the minutes, Colleen, am I correct that the requested motion is for the base bid 1 and 2 and the alternate bid items?
That is correct.
I mean, I don't know anything about this. just seems weird to me that that one is 9:30. That's so much bigger. Like, could they just not open the business?
I mean, part of it could be they're already got a ton of work and, you
Mhm.
know, it's only
Why
worth
don't
it
they
to
do
them.
that? Yeah.
Well, sometimes it's, you know, you only end up getting 2 bids on a job sometimes, you never know.
Yeah.
Can't quite tell, especially these days, it's tough.
Right, right.
So I'll make a motion to, approve G&B Construction Group, for a total bid cost of approximately $48,000, for the U-shaped corridor construction.
Is there any public comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it.
Now, this is way under the money that we have to do this, right?
Yes, comfortably under,
Right, so we have to figure out what to do with that money at some point.
What was allocated, 7 something?
about 800,000 was allocated, my recollection. Yeah, so it just, you know, for now, it just stays in
Right.
your general fund. And then we have other parts of this that we gotta bring back to you for, remember if you had some parts that were
Right.
taken out because of, incompatibility with, and we couldn't get
Right.
easements and things like that.
So let's keep the spread as contingency and these
Yeah.
messy projects, we'll see how they go with, you know, a lot of
Right
problems.
now, it's just a reserve in the fund, and actually, who knows what you're gonna find when you get out there, so right now, it's just a reserve.
The grant we received was $500,000 for the construction.
Fantastic.
But then this doesn't include engineering, right?
Correct.
We used 10% of the grant funds for engineering,
About 80,000. I mean, 50,000.
about 50,000, yeah.
Great.
Next up is the resolution for 2027 municipal obligation.
Yeah, you do this each year. It's relatively procedural. Your actuary computes the amounts. We put them into the resolution. It's the same resolution that you passed last year. Only thing that's adjusted is the forms or the numbers. And then, you know, when you pass it, then it becomes input into the session.
Wasn't it a year or two ago, it came back and there was like a correction to the MMO because someone forgot
Yes.
to carry the 1 or something?
No, they do the MMO on the valuation, and they hadn't they didn't finish the valuation when they did the MMO.
Okay.
So this MMO is done on a valuation that is completed, so they're telling me that there will be no correction to it.
Great.
Doesn't mean that I won't be back next month for
This is for next year, or is
Yeah.
it? This is not-
2027.
So make a motion to approve the resolution for the minimum municipal obligation by a second.
I'll second.
If any board members have a comment, any public comment. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it. Okay, moving on to departmental reports. Is there anything you want to pull out on?
Nothing from me, more of is there anything you want to hear from us?
In the manager report, Don, you were talking about the Q5 EIT, we feel we have a pretty good grasp of what the annual collection will be for that, and we're gonna update that in the budget when we see it next month or October, whenever the timeline is for that, you think?
Well, it'll become the input to the 27 budget, so 26 will be, you'll realize a sizable surplus.
Right.
You know, north of 600,000-700,000, just from that line item alone. Well, 4 line items across all 4 funds. And then next year for the 27 budget, we'll include the larger number as the baseline.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. All right, moving on to regular business, first is the old Lancaster Avenue and North Lake sites.
So, yeah, Colleen will introduce you to this one, and then she's got Chris Williams to provide some information for you.
Sure. A couple months ago, you authorized Bowman to conduct a study at the Old Lancaster North Lakeside intersection going under the tunnel to improve pedestrian mobility and walkability connectivity in the town. Chris presented some options and alternatives to the planning commission last month. They made some recommendations to move forward, which Chris is going to present tonight.
Very good, thank you, Colleen. Does the board have copies of the material? Okay, I have hard copies if you'd like to if you want paper. You good?
I'm
Okay.
good.
All right.
Not to do that.
Yeah, sure.
I like paper.
What's that?
Since you have.
Yeah. Or like easier to flip back and forth.
I'll say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Welcome. Everybody get one. So, so this is just a check-in meeting, to report the results of our last meeting with the planning commission. So we were in front of the planning commission on August 4th. And at that time, we talked about some of the traffic results that we were finding. And the planning commission gave us some feedback, and so this is really just a check-in with all of you, so that you're aware of kind of where we are in the study process with the planning commission, and it's an opportunity for you to provide feedback, endorse potentially where we are in terms of the project progress with the planning commission. Colleen did say it, but I'll say it again. So the purpose of the study, just as a reminder, we are evaluating ways to modify traffic flow to create more space within the road, and that space could be used for pedestrian accommodations. Most notably, principally, that is the goal, is pedestrian accommodations. Could also be used maybe for creative ways to find more on-street parking on Old Lancaster Road. But at the end of the day, it's ultimately about pedestrian movements. I was before the Board of Supervisors on, I think it was July 20th. And at that time, we presented kind of all of our existing conditions results and a whole host of options that were under consideration. The Planning Commission prior to July 20th, and then the Board of Supervisors meeting on July 20th, we kind of narrowed it down to 3 options that were going to be evaluated further. And those are in your handout. So the first option that we evaluated is just simply, what if we go to 1 lane under the railroad? By converting it to 1 lane under the railroad, that would provide more space for a pedestrian way. So that was the first option that we've evaluated. The second option, so the next page in your packet, option 2 keeps the 1 lane under the railroad, but also then looks at designating Old Lancaster Road and Lakeside Avenue to 1-way westbound. And then the third option that we were in the process of evaluating, which is the 3rd page in your packet, also keeps the 1 lane under the railroad, but changes the 1-way designation to the eastbound direction on Old Lancaster Road and Lakeside Avenue. So those are just kind of as background. That's where we left off when I was last before you in July. If you turn to the next page, it says at the top, future 2045 peak hour levels of service. So this just shows, so levels of service are the way we as traffic engineers evaluate operations, performance of an intersection. And we measure the performance of an intersection based on the amount of delay the intersection would experience. And then based on the level of delay, it gets a letter grade. So it's kind of like a report card. So this basically shows how these intersections will operate in the future if we do nothing, right? Just leave it the way it is today. We don't go to 1-way on Lakeside and Old Lancaster. We don't go to a single lane under the railroad. So this is what you're comparing it to. So if we leave those roads the way they are today, this is how conditions will operate in the year 2045. And you'll see that mostly these intersections are operating with very good levels of service, or they will operate with very good levels of service. The only real issue is at Lakeside and Lancaster Avenue, we do have some delay level of service F on your side streets, but that's pretty typical at a stop sign controlled intersection on a major road like Lancaster Avenue. And that has nothing to do with, 1-way designations or anything. That's just really what's going to happen.
How do I read this? Like, is the A outside the parentheses the current? And
So the A, not in the parentheses, is the morning peak hour.
Okay.
And then in the parentheses is the evening rush hour. So it's morning rush hour, evening rush hour. And generally in suburban settings, D or better is like, that's the gold standard, right? If you can meet D or better, you're doing really well. E is really not bad. E is very typical in built up suburban settings. really F is the point, F is what you want to avoid. When you're at a level of service F, that's when your delay is excessive. Level of service F is a delay of greater than 50 seconds at a stop sign, greater than 80 seconds at a signal. So F is really the point at which you might have a problem.
So this is nothing about today. This says 2045.
This is what it will be in 2045, correct? And everything we're evaluating in terms of what we might be doing here, we're comparing it, we're not necessarily just planning for today, we're looking forward because we want to make sure that what we do lasts long term. So if you turn the page, so this is just an aerial graphic that shows, I want to talk first about option one, and that is what are the options that we will, that we want to consider if we designate one lane under the overpass, one lane underpass. We talked about it when I met with the Planning Commission 2 weeks ago. We discussed a variety of different alternatives. They really focused in on two that they like. One is keeping stop sign control on either side of the railroad bridge. And that's what's reflected here. And then the next page, which we'll get to in a minute, is going to traffic signal control. So what's different on this page, we're introducing a stop sign on the eastbound Old Lancaster Road approach by Casey's, right? That is not a stop sign controlled approach today. But if we're going to have only one lane of moving traffic under the bridge, we've got to stop everybody before the bridge so that they know to stop. They wait for the traffic to clear the bridge, and then it's their turn to progress under the bridge. So we have to stop everybody. And then on the north side of the railroad, we're showing, at least under this idea, moving the stop sign so that it's on the approach to the bridge. We might still keep the stop sign up on the conventional, like where it is today on Francis Avenue, but we would need a stop sign as you're facing the bridge so that traffic knows to stop and wait for anybody already under the bridge to clear before they would proceed. So it's kind of like, we've all been there, right? You get these rural, narrow roads in Chester County, whether it be tunnels or bridges, basically one lane goes at a time. So Planning Commission liked this option quite a bit. The next page essentially shows the same concept, but it replaces stop signs with traffic signals. So you'll see on the south side of the bridge, we're showing, again, and this is all just very kind of illustrative for graphics because pictures worth 1,000 words, but it's showing putting traffic signals in instead of stop signs. And then on the north side, it's the same thing. It's not putting, it's replacing that stop sign on the approach to the bridge and replacing it with a traffic signal. Now there is a variation on the north side. We're not sure that the signal, and again, a lot of this would have to kind of play out if an option is selected and if it moves ahead with design, how that signal is designed, whether we put the signal on the approach to the bridge or whether we would have to signalize all legs of the intersection of Warren, Francis, and Old Lancaster. That is really to be determined. But the point of all this is Planning Commission really focused in on two options, whether they be stop sign control or signal control.
So earlier on, I think you said something like the point of this is pedestrian.
That's right.
Right. With the stop signs, it feels like you're not giving the pedestrians much of space, right? Because the cars are just paying attention to the cars and the stop signs. Without signals, you don't give the pedestrians a chance to intermingle with the traffic.
Under the bridge?
I'm just talking if I'm walking down, or the road names here. If I'm walking down Old Lancaster and I just want to go across, I don't want to turn as a pedestrian. There's stop signs there. I've got to intermingle with the cars.
I mean, it's no different than.
Yeah, I get that.
Right.
But it doesn't give anything to pedestrians, whereas the signals could give something to the pedestrians.
Signals are probably a little bit probably emphasize the pedestrian movements more so. I would agree, but stop signs, if a pedestrian is crossing at an intersection in front of a stop sign, motorist has just as much responsibility to stop for that pedestrian as they would.
There's never a case where you can run over a pedestrian. That's never right. Yes.
But the point is, it's still an intersection with control. So the pedestrian is to a certain extent, given the priority. But one, I can understand the interpretation that maybe a signal provides greater priority to the pedestrian. Yeah,
Chris, question about the stop signs, if I may.
yes,
So currently, there's no stop signs on the south side.
that's right. Well, only on westbound Lakeside,
There is a stop sign there.
there is.
Okay, is it covered by vegetation? Because I'm pretty sure it's complete anarchy in that area.
It feels like anarchy, but there is a stop sign there.
Okay,
Um,
it's like a Wawa parking lot because I've driven and I've walked in that area and it's just everyone's kind of driving.
I'm surprised we don't have more incidents.
I agree.
there than-
I agree.
Than we do. It almost feels like that stop sign that I'm suggesting we add ought to be there today. But yeah, there is the one stop sign.
That's existing condition. I'm just grabbing about that.
Yeah.
For the condition that you're proposing, I totally understand it's just graphical. How does visibility look from the south side on either stop sign?
Great question.
Because the reason I ask is because there's a similar two-way, single lane crossing on a bridge that I forget if it's Old Lancaster or Conestoga when it reaches down towards 30. And it's on a turning angle in one spot and you're kind of straight on over here. The cars really can't see each other and you end up kind of meeting in the middle.
Is that Conestoga Road? It's a really low clearance arch tunnel that
Yes.
you're going, yes. And the visibility there is very poor.
Right. Yes, by the whole.
By Whole Foods, very poor visibility. Probably the reason that works is I think the traffic volume is even less there than we had.
But it does back up quite a bit.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not as familiar with it.
No.
But yes, the visibility, the oncoming visibility is not good there. Here, so what we're out there recently taking a look, and we'll get more into this as after tonight, as we progress the project, we will dial in on that more so. But we believe that
Schematically, I'm just curious.
yeah, we believe that if we move the stop location and actually kind of bring those stop bars out into the intersection and clear the bridge abutments, you will have clear visibility. Now you're turning your head, right? You're stopping and you're having to look to the left, but you'll be able to see all the way through the tunnel. But without that visibility, it doesn't work. The stop sign that you mentioned on Lakeside, or that weren't sure that it's there, like that's a perfect example where that stop sign is. It's a stop sign you can't see.
Correct.
You're required to stop and then inch forward to really be able to see what's coming on the tunnel.
There's on these two papers, there's red dots, they mean anything.
No, those are utility poles. Yeah,
So they do mean something.
they do mean something, but not in the context of this conversation, but yes, they absolutely do. Yep. So again, and we did talk about some other options, but planning commission really focused on the stop sign option and the signal option. Let me go to the next page. So the next page it says future 2045 levels of service, 1 lane underpass. So again, this is 2045. So 20 years into the future, more or less. On the left-hand side shows the same levels of service, the delay, the performance measures, right? The letters that you assign. And on the left-hand side, it's with stop sign control. On the right-hand side, it's with signal control. And you'll see that with signal control, levels of service work great, right? 20 years out, we have enough capacity with traffic signal control. Levels of service are all mostly C or better, maybe 1D, and that's still a very good, threshold to meet. So a signal absolutely works well in this condition. Long term, the stop sign doesn't work. The delays are just too severe. Now, why is that? With a stop sign control, you're literally stopping every vehicle. Everybody has to stop, let somebody through, and then the next person stops, and then they go through, and you're literally stopping every vehicle. And that constant stopping of traffic, especially in rush hour, causes that queue to build up. And so the delay becomes just too much. The reason it works better with a traffic signal is when the light is red. So let's say it's green on the south side, and you're letting people come from Casey's come north up through the underpass, and you're stopping them on the north side. Well, they have a red light. When that light's red, you're building a queue. You're building a little bit of pent up demand. But once they get the green light, you're clearing everybody at one time, and it can proceed unhindered. So if it's just a different way of controlling traffic, it Whereas with the stop sign, everybody gets delayed on, every car has to stop before they go through the bridge. In this case, with the signal, just it controls that traffic better. So what does that mean? Long-term, the signal is a better option. Long-term, the stop sign is not a viable option. Planning Commission recognizes that. And I think they realize that is probably what we need to be planning for long-term. Planning Commission absolutely endorsed the signal, but what they would like to see is maybe a phased approach. And that is, yes, this is great. We're doing 20-year projections. We're planning for the future. But do we need the signal today? If we're going to go to one lane under the bridge, can we leave it as a stop sign control in the near term, monitor it, and then just have the traffic signal kind of in our back pocket as a solution to implement when it becomes necessary? So that's something that we're going to take a look at. But they, again, long-term, they endorse the signal concept as really the solution that's needed, but they'd like to see a stop sign option in the short term.
Why? I mean, I don't understand why we wouldn't do the signals right away.
The cost for one thing, right? So a signal is going to cost you $200,000 to $300,000. So if it's not needed, it's a cost savings if it's not needed. Secondly, they were, I think, to a certain extent, concerned with how the neighborhood and the people that live in that area, especially on the north side where you've got homes right in that area, introducing a signal if it's not truly needed. It'll be a little bit more disruptive to the community. So that was sort of the first check-in point with the Planning Commission. So that was their recommendation for the option 1 location. Any questions on that before I go to the other?
Question.
Yes.
Have you talked to the first responders at all about this?
Not yet. It's on our list of things to do coming after tonight's meeting.
Okay, because they may have strong objections to this.
Yes, we'll be reaching out to them. And then certainly documenting their input, and their input in themselves could certainly drive a solution.
Right, so for example, if they object greatly to it, they need, when they're leaving on an emergency control, they need it open. We need signals there to control traffic.
Right. Signals would do a much better job of controlling traffic for emergency response. Yes. Okay, so next page. So this next page shows the levels of service if we were to designate Lakeside Avenue and Old Lancaster Road one-way westbound. So really, if you just focus in on I guess mostly the 2 intersections that I have kind of boxed out in the blue dashed line. Today, the predominant traffic pattern on the Lancaster Road really is in that kind of westbound direction. Traffic today is drawn to the traffic signal. Most of the traffic is oriented in that direction. And what you'll see that if we do go to a one-way westbound flow, we don't need any additional improvements. The signal at Midland and Lancaster works without any changes. The stop sign control at the east end at Lakeside and Lancaster Avenue actually works a little bit better because you've eliminated one leg to the intersection, right? You no longer have Lakeside coming into the intersection on the north side if you go to one way. So now you have less side street competing demand. So you still have a little bit of delay on the south side, right? You have that F in the afternoon, but it's less delay. So the intersection actually works a little bit better than it would if we did nothing and left it as a 4-way intersection. The other intersection that changes in this one-way pattern is the intersection on the south side of the railroad. I didn't put a box around that, but you'll see that we kind of carried forward in this presentation, the signalized scenario. But anything at that Old Lancaster Road, Lakeside Avenue intersection where we have the hidden stop sign that we were referring to, either of the one-way patterns makes that intersection just work even more easily because you have less competing demand in that location. But long story short is one-way westbound works well in terms of the infrastructure that's in place today to accommodate that. The only thing we did talk about, it's not so much a traffic control issue, but we discussed with the planning commission at the eastern intersection, Lakeside and Lancaster Avenue, there was some concern. If we go to one-way westbound, you're now gonna have more traffic that's going, if you can kind of visualize here with them, you'll have more traffic heading east on Route 30, right? They won't turn left at Handles. They're gonna go past that intersection. They'll be now making that left turn at Lakeside.
It will turn into the parking garage beforehand.
Well, they'll either cut through there or they could cut through some of the other businesses like the Verizon. So there could be some, so that is a downside risk of any of this. But to the extent we can control the cut through, if they do what they're supposed to, they would turn left at Lakeside. And so planning commission we had a discussion about that, and there was some thought that if we are going to divert traffic and encourage that more turning movements at that location, there's interest in squaring up that intersection. Right now it's at a skewed angle. We don't need a traffic signal, but there was interest in teeing it up and bringing in the side streets at more than 90 degrees to Lancaster Avenue, so that it's a more conventional turning movement, which we would support.
But today, people making a left, they would have a signal, and Lancaster. In that future scenario, they wouldn't have a signal to make a left.
And they wouldn't need it, they don't need a signal to make that left.
Really?
That's right, yes.
Even with the bond, okay.
They don't, yeah. Yep.
That doesn't make sense to me.
So you don't need the signal. Now, hold that thought though, because if we turn the page, so westbound is easier of the two one-way options. If you go to eastbound, which is the final page here, the intersection on the left side, Midland, Old Lancaster, Route 30, that intersection works fine. If you go to the eastern intersection of Lakeside and Lancaster Avenue, now all of your traffic is coming out eastbound. So your side street volume on Lakeside Avenue coming southbound to Lancaster Avenue is much, much higher. That intersection will fail miserably. So under the one-way eastbound scenario, this intersection will absolutely require a traffic signal to control your side street movements. And with a signal, which is what I'm showing here, I'm not showing you how it is without a signal, but trust me that without a signal, you have levels of service F with significant delays. But with the signal, you can see the levels of service are all very good. So we're not making any final decisions. It was just a check-in meeting with the planning commission 2 weeks ago. It's a check-in meeting with you. Bottom line is the planning commission's interpretation. They want us to keep moving through the project, but right now they're leaning towards under the one-way one-lane underpass. They're interested in stop sign control near term, the signal ultimately as the long-term solution. Whenever that becomes necessary, we will follow up with the first responders. And then and again, we can do something under the bridge, a one-lane underpass, and we can keep it two-way. We don't have to do the one-way eastbound or westbound, right? They really are independent of one another. But then of the two one-way options, either the eastbound or westbound, planning commission is more favorable towards the westbound option. They're not interested in introducing the signal at Lakeside. They were favoring, again, no final decision to be made. This is just letting them kind of even the temperature reading. At this point in the process, they're favoring the one-way westbound as better than the one-way eastbound. And that's not perfect. Absolutely. Yeah, PennDOT would not. If we were to go one lane under the bridge, that would be really a township decision because this is not a state road. Now, if we do introduce a traffic signal to control the one lane under the bridge, then PennDOT would get involved because they have to approve the signal. In terms of the one-way flow on Old Lancaster and Lakeside, PennDOT would get involved in that because we're now changing how those side streets intersect with Lancaster Avenue, which is a state road. We're changing operations at a state road intersection, potentially modifying traffic signals on a state road. So PennDOT would have to get involved. So again, we're not looking for final decisions. It's just a check-in. If the board is inclined to be supportive of the feedback we've received from the planning commission so far, we'll keep moving through this process and kind of further refining these recommendations with greater detail and greater input.
I mean, the board's welcome to provide feedback and any public comment, but I don't think there's an action.
I don't think,
I mean,
And I'm more interested in the signaling. If we're gonna do the under the bridge, I don't think we should delay the signaling. I just think that's asking for a problem. To not do that, because it's not a short bridge,
it is not.
yes. And, I'm not against it, I just don't remember, why are we doing this? Like, what's our goal here?
The goal
Yeah.
of the project, I mean, so you really look at the project in two pieces or three pieces. You have under the bridge, and then you've got Old Lancaster Road by School of Rock, and then you've got Lakeside Avenue. And first and foremost, it's the purpose of the project is how can we better accommodate pedestrians? So if you take the bridge first, right, right now it's a 21-foot wide paved road under the bridge. There's no room for pedestrians. Pedestrians today are taking kind of risks walking under that bridge. So how can, within a reasonable period of time, long term, we would love to get a separate pedestrian tunnel under the bridge, but you don't need me to do a study, right? I can tell you right away that that's a great option. Is there a way to accommodate pedestrians under the bridge as it exists today? And so the best way to do that, the safest way to do that would be to provide I'll say 5-foot wide sidewalk under the bridge, maybe have a railing on it, and then we have sidewalk leading to the bridge so pedestrians can safely walk under the bridge. That leaves you with 16 feet. 16 feet does not accommodate 2 lanes of traffic, so that's why we would have 1 lane alternating. So that's that scenario. That planning commission that's their first goal, is how can we get pedestrians under the bridge? Then the second kind of tier of this project is how can we make Old Lancaster Road by School of Rock or Lakeside Avenue, those are fairly narrow roads, they don't have continuous sidewalk. They want to provide an environment where a pedestrian theoretically could walk from start to end along those roadways and have a pedestrian facility to do so and not have to be in the road. And we also have on-street parking on parts of that area, on parts of Old Lancaster Road. And so is there something we should be doing differently with the on-street parking? So by taking a 2-lane road and making it a 1-lane road, it gives us more room and real estate to work with to maybe do better things with parking or provide wider sidewalks or provide sidewalks where sidewalk doesn't exist.
Right, sidewalk doesn't exist, so in addition, like we talked about signaling and everything here, but this also intends to have sidewalks. Right, the intention would be to really build sidewalks as part of it.
I believe so, yes.
Right, right.
Yeah,
So
I
that's a
think the
big
intention
step.
is what you all decide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, that's what I'm trying to get, why are we doing this kind of
And
thing?
none of the sidewalks are shown in this,
Right.
because this is the first component that you have to address.
We're not at that part,
Yeah.
right? First, we want to make sure that do we have even a canvas to work from in terms of our ability to change traffic flow? If we think that there's some ideas here to change traffic flow, then we can look at, okay, well, what does that do for us? What room does that open up to then provide pedestrian facilities?
The weirdness in that area, it's Old Lancaster Road and somewhat Lakeside Avenue as well, is it's not really lines, if I recall correctly. It's not really road lines. There's no real break between parking lot and curb and road. It's just all kind of paved.
Bills out.
So it's very unfriendly from a pedestrian standpoint. You know where to walk. And then there's cars coming, you're kind of taking your life in your own hands doing that. Because again, I've made that walk before. I've dropped my car off at the Volvo dealership and then walked my way back this way going under that bridge. And it's 8 a.m. There's cars flying all over the place that way. It's very dangerous. And I'm, tiptoeing over a curb that's on the side of where that bridge is. So having a sidewalk and a railing or something like that. I think something like that makes sense. So there's something here. I agree with what you're saying. It requires sidewalks as well to kind of funnel people into the areas that they need to
Yeah,
go.
and then I think we should include the sidewalks in these diagrams, even if we don't know what they're gonna be.
Well, that's coming next. That is a next step in the process. So right now it's just to check in on the operation, the traffic operational results.
And it's giving you a taste for the cost, because you're getting a taste for the signals, you know how expensive sidewalks are. endorsing them, you're sort
I'm
of.
thinking sidewalks, if we're doing sidewalks, signals are cheap. I'm kidding. Yeah.
But you get a sense for this is,
Right.
this is $200,000 kind of thing.
What about biking?
What about, there's no bike lanes, bikes would share the road with cars, but, bikes would share the traffic.
Okay, so we're not doing anything special for that.
We're not.
And to your point with the stop sign versus signals, I support the signals more. I understand they're more expensive, but it seems like a half measure to put stop signs in there and then plan like, well, hopefully fingers crossed in 10, 15 years, someone will revise it and put signals in. It never ends up happening that way. So if we're gonna do this, let's do it right and just do it so it's future proof.
I do think the signals provide greater control.
Emergency services, there's a benefit to that. Pedestrian, like you said, and then the long-term traffic flow, it just makes more sense to do it. Get it done.
And the only reason to not do it is cost, so if you're comfortable with the cost, then I think that's some pretty valuable feedback that you just got.
Yeah, but we shouldn't do half a project. Like, if we can't afford to do it right, let's.
All good.
We should.
Yeah, I'm sort of, more what I wanna make you aware of is the magnitude of the cost, and so that you're.
And the next step in the process, we'll refine all this, we'll give you greater detail, and we'll start to put some, again, we're not doing detailed cost estimates, we'll give you some ballpark estimates, but. What does a signal cost? A signal here, if you were to signalize both sides of the bridge. It's probably $200,000 to $300,000 for a signal.
And there's.
And this isn't going from here right into the budget, this just goes into the mix of all the other budgets.
But there's money for sidewalks, as we've seen, there could be money for signals, I don't know. If we can connect this to a trail connect, there could be money for trails.
Oh, this whole thing could be a very nice grant project.
Mhm.
It's checking a lot of boxes that would, I think, do well.
Multimodal, what are all the
Yeah.
terms we gotta
Yeah.
check the boxes on?
So I'd rather find it out right, see what money we can get from grants and then decide what we're gonna do, not the other way around.
On board.
Well, that's it. Just wanted to get your feedback. Thank you for giving me the time. And I think at this point, we're gonna be back in a couple of months to really present kind of like the final kind of draft document.
The engineering plans.
I wish.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the 2026 bond issue.
All I want to do is update you that the sale occurred along with what was represented to you at the last meeting. And then those values are the new debt service. They're marginally less than what was represented at the July meeting, but I would say aligned.
You've done the closing of those plans.
September 3rd.
Any risk of any of that changing before close? I know the deal about bond yields going up now, government debt.
I don't think so. I think that what happens at the sale, they lock into all that, so I think that's. And whatever risk there is was absorbed and transferred already.
So a friend of ours, we had dinner with them on Saturday, they're retiring, they're looking at their investments and stuff, and they want to get municipal bonds. And their investment advisor said, oh, we got these town bonds, and you just. Like, wow. Who knew it spreads out that quickly?
Yeah, all right.
Okay, so that's it. I just sort of wanted to memorialize the new rates, put them in there, so now they're nothing more than what I just reported to you, right?
The budget workshop.
Thanks, Colleen, would you bring that up, first page? Okay, so identical in form to what we did last year, we're trying to move from general to particular, trying to sort of set the stage so that when the first pass, everything fits into the puzzle of the budget, guided by the kind of things that we've been talking about for the year. So following really the same format as the previous years. So first slide is that's the schedule. That's really identical to what we did last year and the year before. We had a couple of meetings where we just talked about it. I try to get your input on things. You give me feedback. We're trying to inform the budget. At fourth workshop, if we need it, you have a draft budget in November that largely has to define a sizable amount of your budget. It sits idle for a month. Then you have a final budget in early December, and then we keep that last meeting open in case there's some kind of change. Schedules worked the last couple of years. no changes this year. The dashboard, what we talked about, so we'll talk about the employees and the assets. We'll talk a little bit about expense, a little bit about revenue, and then generally about some of the differences coming along next year. So that asset page, previous to that, in other direction.
This one?
That way, there, yeah. So same table as last year, the only thing that's updated is you're adding one more officer, you haven't added the officer yet, but it's budgeted, the police are interviewing or posting. So at some point this year, presumably soon you'll add an officer. Other than that, it's the same as what it was last year. It's not really changing significantly. That's your equivalency, that's your full-time, that's your labor. Labor is a sizable part of government, nothing's changing, officially, nothing has changed beyond what I just described to you. And then on the right, the facilities, that's identical to last year. We're including the park now, Sharpsburg as park. But you certainly have a decent amount of properties, you have 4 pump stations, you have a few buildings, 3 parks, you have 50 miles of roads. You issue a lot of permits, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of permits across the disciplines. You have, those are just numbers pulled from the insurance carrier, so that's your values for all those different things. You're very labor intensive, which all governments are. Governments are labor intensive. And then you have a decent number of contractors. You have fewer employees than most municipalities have, but you do a decent amount of contract labor. So you might have more contract labor than a lot of municipalities, but decent amount of contractors, consultants, and then public meetings. Last year, I estimated it to be about 110 per year. Seems to be about the same. Any questions about that so far? All right, next slide. This one's kind of interesting because that first one on the left has changed considerably from 2 years ago. So you can see that you're relatively high, you're up in this area here. So you're high relative to your peers, but you were working your peers in that one 2 years ago. So you've come down twice by 10%, and during that period, lots of your peers in here went up by 4, 5, 6, 7, 8%. So you've closed that gap, whether that's where you want it or not, that's policy choice for you. But you looked much more like County Township 2 years ago when you were at 6, and these entities were below 3. Now you're approaching the middle in ways that you had before. Fair enough. Okay, then that slide to the right, hold on, Colin, I keep slipping. EIT, that's also revealing, and there you could arguably say you're just average. Here you're certainly above average, but pretty much most of the municipalities in Chester County that have it at the 0.5 amount that you have. Some have more, as you can see. So your discounts are different. They don't have it. You're tied for first, you're tied for last, and from my perspective. Trifflin's a bit of an outlier. This is a selected list, but most of Chester County has an EIT. I think there's only 4 or 5 municipalities that don't. I didn't put all municipalities up there. I selected them by peer, and then I added your immediate neighbors, which is why Trifflin. So, questions, comments about that?
It's helpful to look at. I like it. I also like when I was kind of doing the studies for this for a year or 2 ago. I also like to look at what the local Montgomery County municipalities look like and what the local Delco municipalities look like as well, because it's sometimes in some ways we're a lot closer to them than we are Callan Township. So I like kind of getting a sample of that as well. Not saying you got to do that, just it's helpful to kind of visualize everything in context.
So, and this largely comes from a document that's already made for this. So there's no other, that's raw, that's just data taken directly from that. Good stuff. Okay, next one, Colleen, the revenue slide. Okay, on the left is the general fund. This is budgeted revenue because budget is our best estimate. It's a strong indicator. It doesn't need as many qualifiers. You can see how real estate and earned income are so sizable, that's, you know, pretty normal. You get a decent amount of transfer tax, you get a decent amount of permits. But they're very small, you know, that's real money between the two of them, that's $1.2 million. But that's much, much smaller than, real estate and earned income. This is 26, so it doesn't reflect that, $800,000 that will reflect next year. So that gap should get smaller, they're not gonna become the same, but the difference between them should shrink considerably next year.
Is stuff like liquid fuels included in here, or is that just
Well, this is just the general fund,
Okay.
you know, because it's the most restricted. You know, it gets pretty cumbersome to figure out, but it'll all be like it was in the executive, so it'll all be, you know, tonight this one I pulled out because I thought it was, descriptive and helpful.
Sure.
It tells a story, try to tell stories with pictures. All right, and the one on the right is also very, very informative. You can see a lot of things here. You can see the capital decrease. So you were north of $1 million, circa 12. As you relieved capital, you really transferred that to operations. So at the end of that cycle, your capital, your debt service went to 330,000 because when you came off of debt service, instead of putting more debt service on the back end of that, you use that to basically sustain this 10-year period where you didn't have tax increases. So your costs went up during that period, your taxes really didn't go up. That explains this year where you had to have the one very significant millage increase, and then you lowered the millage twice. And this is TBD, that's a policy choice for you. I haven't heard any feedback that you want an additional reduction in taxes for millage for next year. You promised one, delivered two. It's your choice. You have to give me that feedback if you want to more for next year. You don't have to give it to me now. I'm just saying that's
I don't know what you guys think. I like this. I don't know, you know, we're still pretty high.
We get to see like.
Yeah.
Estimate of
Yeah.
what the lower piece would look like.
Yeah,
5%.
yeah, so 5% is $400,000.
$500 million?
So your, like, you, that project that you just looked at, you know, was $500,000. So, and then remember, we had about 800,000 in this surplus that we're projecting for next year. And you don't know whether in 2 years, fire EMS is going to ask to consume that 800,000.
You just sold a bunch of debt to build a building. I don't think it's wise to be cutting taxes at the same time we're issuing debt and have to pay for it for another 20-some years.
So I'm relying on your feedback. I'm not bringing it to you different because I'm not hearing from you that you want it different. If you do, you know, we have time. That's what this month and next month and September, October for. Okay, you see the one-time increase, you see the fire fund that shows up. That's this orange band, very illustrative. And arguably, you see the shift in EIT because you see the millage goes down dramatically, but you're still meeting what you're spending. EIT. Okay, so any questions about that?
It looks like Susan has her
No.
hand raised.
Oh,
Susan,
you know what, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, my only comment is I don't think we should try to lower taxes right now because we are actually, you know, creating so much debt.
So for me, it's just gonna be, you're all gonna tell me, I'm not gonna, gonna be nothing on my end reading you to that. Great. Great. Okay, on the expense side. Yeah, nothing new there. Again, general fund on the left. You can see that leasing is very expensive. It's always been that way. It'll always be that way in municipalities. It's getting more expensive for you, not less, because you're adding officers. You added an officer. That's not unusual. Leasing is very, very expensive. You haven't been working, it's your choice, policy choice. On the all fund side, so this is your expense across funds, so. You also see very revealing things about government that between salary, healthcare, and pension, you have a sizable amount of expense. That's it's true of a lot of entities, it's certainly true of government. So this part, relatively stable, there's not a lot of new stuff happening in here, you've obviously got some new debt service. But you're not changing that. A little bit more, changing it on the margins with some things, adding another officer isn't inexpensive, but it's not. You're all in, you're 23 million, $20 million entity, $21 million entity. And the officers, so that changed that overall.
So this is the 26 debt services, so I didn't include the building.
Yeah, that won't include the building. It's so big mostly because it's sewer debt
It includes the
service.
sewer, right?
Yes.
It's just.
Sewer debt service is roughly 1.6 million, and your township debt service is only 400,000. And this does include the sewer debt service from the most recent borrow. All good, excellent. Okay, so then what's staying the same? So sewer, you had already adjusted the rates. The EMA makes a recommendation every year. You have followed their recommendation. So probably 3-4 years ago, they made the determination, they recommended 2 sizable increases with the plan was that you would have inflation-oriented increases subsequently. So you're in a position to do that. You can likely sustain that into the foreseeable future. They made a recommendation for 4.5%. That's what will be in your baseline budget. It can be 3, it can be 6. It can be a lot of things. It's a policy choice for you. The 4.5 is what the EMA recommended to keep you at inflation-oriented increases for the foreseeable future. Trash will just go up by the cost of the contract. We just passed that through. That's a few percentage points each year. Your contributions lately, you've been increasing them by inflation, 2.5% or so. So presumably you want me to do that. You've done that the last couple of years. The fire company's costs go up, the library's costs go up. So presumably you've been increased by the inflation-oriented amounts. If that's not the case, let me know.
That's what my contributions is.
Yeah.
It just goes to the fire and EMS.
Fire, EMS, library.
So this doesn't take into account their request to us.
No,
because we haven't decided
no.
anything.
And then I'll get to when I get to what's different. Operations are largely the same because you're not direct, it's basically steady state. We're changing on the margins. We've got things here and there. We've got inflation-oriented increases, but there's no dramatic changes in the operation. The millage will stay the same unless you tell us to change the millage. The staffing isn't changing. And the capital, you've got lots of big swings on timing, but no new projects unless you tell us to put a project in. So some old projects are now coming due and you've got to pay them. They're all planned for and ready to go, but no new capital projects unless you tell us you want a different capital project.
Sidewalks, that's that popping in my mind. Having them constantly in the hopper, new design, new plan.
Okay, so you have, maybe that's like a snapshot of where you are, not now, I don't have that prepared for you now, but you'll have some under construction next year. You'll have a grant in for like a planning level analysis of the Conestoga Road one. You have the Newtown Road in design, so you'll have that, and that's in design now. So you have that, whether you want to add another one, the logic of adding another one is you're not adding $1 million, you're adding 70,000 to evaluate something or 100,000 to design it, knowing that you might add 800,000 later or have to get a grant later.
Yeah, I mean, pet project of mine is right after the Conestoga run, is doing one on Waterloo, north of the train station, so there's actual sidewalks walking to the train station. It's a travesty, we don't have walking access now in that direction.
Things still standing. Like a train station, so fall apart.
I mean, we don't own that, it's not our.
know.
Okay, the next slide is what's changing. Four things changing. So, EIT, you know, we have enough information to make a, you know, a much larger estimate this year, so the budget will reflect a number somewhere around 5 million. This year it was somewhere around 4.3 million. Last year it was somewhere around 3.2 million. So this will reflect our most full and best estimate.
And this year we'll budget putting money into reserves, so. 'cause we have-
Yeah, the 27 budget, everything that is excess will just essentially stay in the general fund until we're creating the reserve fund that's on the list also. So one of the things that's different for next year is we're creating that fund that will be the repository of excess money. Police staffing changing, you're adding one, and then the debt service obviously changes because you added about $1 million debt service for it. All right, and then uncertain items. Police CBA, I put as uncertain. Maybe it's because it's transitioning, that got settled, so now we just haven't seen, and probably the biggest thing is the healthcare. So healthcare got changed, you know, we have to have that ripple through. That should save you cash, but we have to see that ripple through. That's a little bit uncertain. You know, EIT, hey, we've only had 5 quarters of data, so there's elements of uncertainty with that. Fire EMS is hugely uncertain because there's a tremendous gap between what's in your budget now and what's in the fire consultant report from 3 years ago. So you all have to make that choice as a community. The library has some new initiatives that aren't in there, or unless you tell us to put them in there.
In
And
addition
then,
to the building. When you say new initiatives, do they have things they want other than the building?
as far as I know, just the building, yeah. Well, and there's some other little capital stuff that we're talking, but not on that scale. The capital stuff that we're talking about are fixing things and whether they're capital repairs or, but the building's the biggest new initiative. And then you had developed a little list of aspirations: open space, parks, sidewalks, trails, streetscapes. None of those are in there until you tell us to put them in there. And then the advisory boards make recommendations to you each year, and none of them are in there unless you tell us to put them in there. So, you know, at the end, there's capability to do things, particularly when you're in a year when you're in a reserve. But you have to want these things, and then you have to tell us to put them in there.
One that I'll advocate for at this point is the Stormwater Management Advisory Committee. I think for 2 or 3 years in a row, they advocated for putting the stopper on. So instead of doing big earthworks types of projects and new, you know, drainage and everything, they had, you know, high water areas and then basically a signal that comes down and says road closed automatically. And it was like a $50,000 or $60,000 intervention. I think it was in the budget preliminarily, got stripped out the last 2 or 3 years in a row. So I think it makes sense to add that in there, have them manage the project and see how it goes. And there's 2 spots like that. So
You do 2 spots.
I forget.
Yeah, it was one spot was down here at Beaumont at the creek here, and I believe the other one was Sugartown. Sugartown near sort of the western part of it, where it crosses the street creek, and they went through they spent a long time of it coming up with that. And the Sugartown logic was, these are the ones that that had the most reports of uncrossable, and then Sugartown is the spine that cuts you in half. And so if you know, protecting that one big spine that cuts you in half, that was some of the reason. And then this one was just rip roaring dangerous when we saw it. It's only been that way once in the 10 years I've been here. But when we saw it, it was something really remarkable there.
Just automatically does it.
Yeah,
It's the lagoons to do that.
like you see them on, Highway 9 on the Jersey Shore where the lights will come on and tell you that the road's closed.
And they can have automatic, messaging, so
Yeah.
it sends out text messages to local residents or something automatically and stuff like that. So there's good stuff and it's not that expensive. The current way that it's managed is, they'll call it in, when someone sees it and the police have to go out there and, basically direct traffic around it. But the reality is sometimes these storms are only happening for a half hour, 45 minutes an hour. By the time the officer gets out there, the event's done. 2 cars may have already had, hydroplane or something like that. So
And the officer would have to wait with it because the turnaround time, the public works can't turn on the dime like that because of just the nature of where people live. So very thoughtful. They went through a long, thoughtful approach. If you decide to do it, it survived the scrutiny of analysis and it survived the scrutiny of these are the best 2 that they picked and why. It's still a policy choice for you all.
So put both of them in there would be like $110,000 or something like that, so. Something like that makes sense. Again, it's been 2 or 3 years in a row, we've tried to put this in there, and not done it, but they are. So I think it's high time to do it, similar to the historical commission last year, where we finally said, yeah, we should pay for a consultant to come in and do the assessment.
Okay, so then the last slide is, just the same format as last year, the workshops inform the placeholder. So the placeholder is my first pass at the budget for you all, but I need guidance and feedback to create that for you. The placeholder informs the draft, so that's that first document that you see. The draft steers the budget because there's only so much change you can have between the draft and the final, so you have to be decently far along by the time you get the draft. And then the budget controls all the policy choices we make for the next year, so we'll bring a few more of these to you as the months come between now and October. And then you'll also get the recommendations from the advisory groups about what they want or what they think is best for the community. Questions, comments, concerns? Hope it was okay.
Okay, let's move on to the Sharpswood access project.
Yeah, okay, Colin, just bring that one up. So this is analogous to the review you had with Chris Williams. And we're gonna go, it's a check-in to see where you are and what you want. The map is probably the best one. It's okay. There you go. So last year you authorized a small amount of planning money to evaluate access to the park, to Sharps Woods in this case, on the western part of it. So Sharps Woods, this is the western part of it here. And it's a state highway. You've got a sort of de facto trail cut into the pipe. Trails, but you also have a very sizable clearing. So the thought was to improve the access on the western side of it. So 4 options basically, reflect the range. So one is you start at the bottom, you have no action, just, it's okay. You can live with it as it is if that's your choice. No action is always an alternative. You had the most extreme thing that you evaluated was a sidewalk all the way up to this clearing. But then that got into, you can't really get across the culvert. This is a stream. You can't really get across the culvert without enormous cost and significant involvement from PennDOT. So, or rather from PennDOT and DEP. So basically, you had to rebuild the culvert and to make it wide enough for pedestrians to use. And rebuilding culverts is you gotta really have a demand for that to rebuild a culvert. So it kind of, maybe it's your choice, but as I put in the memo, that was approaching millions or $1 million. And it's sort of from our end as the staff, it made it not likely that we didn't think you would want to proceed with that. You can cut into the park south of that, But you've got elements of, that won't be chunk change, and it will just, some would say it's just dead ends, like it'll cut into the path and you can find a way to meander to the other paths. You'd have to cross the stream. If you cross the stream with, some kind of bridge, that's a big thing. You can not cross the stream and let people walk through it and get their feet wet kind of thing, there's a choice. That's not the same expense as the other one. But as you can see in the memo, it's not inexpensive. You've got a couple $100,000 for for the signals alone. And many tens of thousands for the sidewalks and things of that sort. So at this level, that's, 135 to 290 is the number I'm figuring there. An option that came up is more conventional crosswalks here. This neighborhood is connected. That conventional crosswalks, that's sight lines are better, it's an intersection. It doesn't satisfy this concern, it doesn't get you in here, and it doesn't get you across the highway here. But it arguably gets you across the highway here, and it gives you access to the park here. So some of these people might walk that way to get to it instead of this way. These are all policy choices for you. A bit of an impasse for us. We don't want to explore anything that you're opposed to. If you want us to pick one of these, then tell us. If you want us to stop, we stop. If you have seen enough to know what you want to do, tell us now. But it's just kind of a snapshot of where we are. A lot of talking from me, sorry about that. Colleen, anything to add? John, anything to add to it?
My take would be, I want to see our trail plan for much of this stuff, because we got a lot of sidewalk things plans with all our sidewalks. Anything for John Peter. Seems like, like people get to the park today, right? How much is it adding to?
So that kind of lends itself to tap the brakes on this. This was useful to get to this point. This information is memorialized, tap the brakes on it. So we hear from Bob Thomas, and maybe that informs this.
Bob Thomas says the best, like clearing, the best thing you can do is take a trail from Sharp's Woods to Hilltop Park. That would tell us something that we would have to do. At that point, we'd have to figure out how to do that, but we don't know that.
Yeah.
I think regardless though, if there's a trail connection to it, I think having a trail path inside the new park is, kind of an independent issue though.
Right, inside, that's inside, I think this is outside.
The connection to.
Some of the logic was to make it, to make you be able to pass through it. You could, whether you presumably could pass through it here, but you'd have to cross the stream.
It's not a very busy area.
Yeah, it's our understanding it's not a very busy area, which is some of why we have brought, when $1 million came into it, it caused pause. And then even this solution is not an instance of that. The signal alone costing 35 to 110 is, I think, the number engineering.
Crosswalks being helpful regardless. For such a something, it's not that busy there, right?
Well, I think crosswalks are helpless regardless. I can't help but bring the money in. It also comes down to whether they're worth the money. So if you have very little, it's a little bit of a dilemma with infrastructure. It creates new demand. So you could say, hey, the only reason there aren't a lot of people walking there is because you have unsafe access. With safe access, maybe you have more walkers. Genesis of this was access to the park down here. Seems reasonable to just kind of tap the brakes and see what what Bob Thomas has to say, so that this decision is made in the context of other decisions. John, anything to add?
I mean, I like the idea of connecting all our parks and the way to talk to them. Not that they really necessarily want to create some network or things like that, but until we get a sense of that. And even everything else we want to do, probably focus on this.
All right. Move on to the police and construction building.
Yeah, so mostly I just wanna let you know what's brewing now. So the design's continuing. Probably the sizable next step is the planning commission and voting hearing board. I want Andy to talk to you a little bit about the zoning hearing board process. His office will represent you there.
And just, we don't know if and to what extent some of the hearing board belief would be needed, but as we're heading into the design stage, we're sort of penciling those into a calendar. Under the township zoning code, Easttown as a municipality is exempt from any use provisions. So if you do need relief, it would be conventional type of language. And so I think our plan is to sit down with the architects and our planning staff and understand where the design is going. On the planning commission, I believe the prior direction, general direction from the board was there's a question in Salvo whether the ordinance allows you to waive provisions of the land. That could include waiving the whole process. I believe the township's direction was you're going to go through that process. And that's why the planning commission would be tapped for that. And what could be presented again, depending on how the architect works through the design, are kind of the standard waiver requests like you see with the developer. Those are things the board can grant anyway. But if you're filing a traditional land development plan, you're going to go through the county planning commission, which is a letter of response, and you'll go to the township planning commission, and your engineer will identify waivers. So we don't have any plan of asking for a waiver of the entire process, unless the board tells us differently. But I think that was the direction last year's.
Works for me. So I don't know the schedule. It all depends upon the next step for us is what we're, kind of a planning session with the architect, lawyer, and the planning staff.
It's really the technical.
Yes. And then that will inform the next step. If it's ready, if it's right for the next step, we'll file the next steps. If it's not right, we'll make it right for the next steps.
Great. I'd be surprised if we needed any relief. I don't think there's nothing obvious, at least, right?
I think there's a few things that right now they're
On the
talking about.
use side, some of the questions are, for instance, with parking. You've got a parking chart in the township code. There's nothing specifically for a municipal building or police station. So part of what we need to do is figure out what is the closest fit and what, if something applies and what applies.
Just add.
You could get legislative power, you could do that too.
Right. Instead of getting zoning relief, we just change the rule.
But the first thing we want to do is see where the technical requirements being. And they come back to you.
Right, and I'm joking about that. We make our residents go to this, we should go towards it, like, free ourselves.
Only anything to add to it?
No.
John, anything?
So we're coming.
All right, so everybody's with our liaison work group report. So Berlin Devon Business Association. I don't have anything with the association that been kind of really not active, but I talked to Stacy about mural that we talked about, and she said we have the story put together, images. It's full mural season, so now they're coordinating with the artists they want to hire, who've also been very busy. So it's been slow but a thoughtful process. So they're still making progress and it's still on this way. That's all I have. Systems Communication Advisory Board. That's Eric. It's not. Okay.
EMA, they met, they discussed the bond issuance, the amount of expected increase. Don brought up the recommendation is about 4.5%. An increase for next year, and a couple of miscellaneous items like that, but overall, standard.
You can see. Susan's there, but I don't think she put the funds. They meet tomorrow, right?
Yeah, they meet.
Okay. Finance work through.
Yeah, we have. Talked to them all. I know what you mentioned the water festival, right?
Audit year to date, finances, EIT.
Everything's good.
Heat fire condition.
We're meeting Wednesday. I want to update, did have, you have to go through the process of hiring a fire administrator, we have interviews, we're still on.
I checked in with Glenn. So they had a check-in meeting with the JMT on July 29th about the historical resources survey. It's on schedule. And we're talking to 422 South Water Street. As the new owner plans on restoring the property since you can see it in September and October. That was all I had. So anything like that.
They've scheduled the next check-in meeting for, I think, this 26th, so that's about 10 days or so.
Okay.
They finished all their field work. And now they're preparing a lot of the digital things that they'll be loading up into the state database. It's a lot of work.
Yes. Library did not meet in July, but there was.
Yeah, two updates that I can give. One is we received the grant from the Macklin contributorship for mobile shelving in our new area. And most importantly, we have hired Schultz and Williams to conduct a feasibility study of potential capital campaign in support of the renovation. And that's big.
Yes. And Amber did include also additional updates, which is in our packet as well.
Last month, they hosted a petting zoo. Kids went to it, they had a great time. This past weekend, they hosted a Touch a Truck event. It was incredible. They had the police there. They had a truck. They had they had a ladder truck for the fire station, Paoli Fire Company, Berlin Fire Company. They had Handel's ice cream truck. They had a school bus. I mean, my kids were in heaven.
Public Works truck too. So,
yes.
Public Works was represented.
They were in the bucket in the front loader and everything. They sat in the thing. Kids were steering the wheel. It was freaking out. It was awesome. I had a great time.
We on Parks and Rec. Susan again.
They didn't meet last
Maybe, okay. Pension work group.
Had it, got the review from, aligned to market forces and, I can share it with you if you want.
So
It's all aligning.
And we just approved the MMO, so.
PC.
At the PC, they did the Old Lancaster Lakeside check-in, and they also did an update for the Route 30 Complete Streets initiative.
Police work group.
We didn't meet, but I did have a separate discussion with Mike. There have been some discussions around the license plate reader cameras. So we spent some time, well, we don't use Block, we use a different company, so we're not involved in that. And we have a lot of guardrails on them. I've spent a good amount of time with the officers today, trying to see how it works, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. They're not allowed to do it a lot, so there's a lot of guardrails on how it works. And it works well. I talked to the detectives, they've closed 6 or 7 cases just because of the access to the camera, so.
We have 2 spots in our township where it's located, and then a third that's very close to our township, right? 252 is the close one.
We have one on 252, we have one on
Sugartown, and then 30 more.
right?
Who determines where those are located, and is that this board's jurisdiction in terms of helping to decide that?
The police, I don't, the police work with the contractor to figure out where to put them. And we could have insight into that.
I mean, ultimately, I think it should come to the elected board to decide that, so I think before any additional ones are added, I think we should probably, I don't know, if administratively, probably enforce something that says like that ultimate decision comes to us. We can take recommendations from the contractor or the police, but ultimately, I think it needs to be our board who decides like, yes, this makes sense, or no, this doesn't.
Andy, you got thoughts?
Just from my recollection, I believe with some state grants, when some of those intersections or lights were improved, it was part of the package, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, there's many lights out there, right? Not just, I mean, there's many cameras, not just our cameras.
Right.
And so people confuse the PennDOT cameras.
Which is
cameras,
right.
Yeah.
And so I think there was partnering on some of those, but I can't tell you that I know definitively. But
At our next meeting, let's talk to next session about, what he would like to see us do, I'm sure.
Andy, is that something that we could, enforce within our jurisdiction and says?
yeah, I mean, I think
We have
you could
authority.
work cooperatively with the police department, just that there's an informational process and you're okay with it. You wanna be careful about making administrative operational decisions, but this is big picture enough, and it's become a privacy issue.
Right.
Even though my understanding is in Easttown, completely different setup, and as Michael said, a lot of procedural guardrails, because I know that was a concern many years ago when a system was starting to be used. So I don't think there's any problem with the board being involved in it.
Fair. Thank you.
Public Works.
We met on August 12th. The road program is done, so hopefully all the roads are good. And I'm always amazed when I see the list that Joe keeps of all the work that they've done. It's just a great list of stuff that's being done around here. Parks are good. We're working towards Everwood. Don sent out a note about that. That seems to be moving along well. We talked about a SMAC group in terms of, how do we move forward? What do we do, kind of thing. And that's about it.
Thank you. Stormwater management.
SMAC didn't have a forum, but I already brought up the signalized crossing idea, so we'll talk budget.
Okay, thank you. Brings us to public comment.
Chairman, my name's Joseph Cohen. I live on Sugartown Road in Devon. I wanted to, I guess, first of all, thank you. I've had the privilege, maybe I can move forward a little bit, I have a minute or two. And the privilege of appearing for this board over the years as legal counsel in a number of matters, and lived my whole life in Easttown Township, so it's always a privilege to be here. And let me start by thanking all of you for what you do. In the big sense of being volunteers for this, and then when you get into the micro and all the details you deal with. I want to raise with you something that a group of residents presented in a formal package back in November of 2022 to the Open Space Committee relative to a property in Berwyn, the so-called Berwyn Square property. And I think if I could, have just a minute or two for some background, I think we're really at a crossroads in this township. There's been such great progress with Berwyn and with the township generally. The beautification, the improvements by individual homeowners, the improvements in the community, the murals, etc. And what we proposed back in 2022, and it was supported by about 100 people at that time, many who had been involved with the original zoning variances that were sought for the original Berwyn Square project, which was much bigger than this. And also a group of people then who submitted a zoning application, which is highly unusual, just a community group would submit a rezoning application that didn't come from a particular developer or whatever, to bring down the unit density in Berwyn that had been earlier raised in sort of a way that wasn't particularly clear to the community. And only when these proposals for these projects were announced did people see that there was this provision in the zoning code that allowed to build those kind of larger parks. So what we suggested, and what I'd like to raise with you tonight, is a bold concept. But I think we're, to say really at a crossroad to consider exercising the township's power of eminent domain to obtain that property as a public gathering space, as a public park for the township. This is not just consistent with the comprehensive plan that's in place and the earlier open space plans going back to the 90s. And we cited all this in detail. You leave these with you or not. But they're really called for by the comprehensive plan is very specific, both for Berwyn and Dedham, that public gathering space is something we should strive for, and that acquisition by the township should be a goal and a recommendation to achieve that. Now, I think, I've had some informal conversations with some members of the board. I haven't spoken to you, Mr. Chairman, and you, Mr. Bosco, and I haven't spoken to Ms. Lewuttier about this. But I did want to raise it at a public meeting to put it out in public. I think if you had a magic wand and you could say, do I want a large boxy apartment building on that site? Or would I like to have a public space that could be used for, unlimited art shows, every kind of pop-up market, every kind of Christmas market, things for the high schools, imagine music things for all the local high schools to compete in, art shows for all the local high schools and other schools to compete in, 4th of July activities, summer, you name it, unlimited kinds of things, little playground for kids or whatever. Or do you want the big boxy apartment? I think we, I don't know for sure, but I think you might come down on this side of using this for the gathering space. I think it would be, it would solidify all the progress that has been made there and be something that would, be unique for Easttown, unique for Berwyn for the next 50 years. Otherwise, just another apartment in the strip. I have some specific requests for you to consider putting this into your mix and listening to the budget issues. Obviously, a lot of things to deal with, a lot of costs. As something that would be in this mix to consider. It's not too late. I see they're demolishing some stuff, although it sat there vacant for 4 years while things were just falling down. I hope they don't take down that gigantic sycamore tree in the next week or month, but maybe take one look at that. It could be a symbol of what Berwyn or Easttown is instead of a boxy apartment. But to put that on agenda, let's seek public input on it. Get an appraisal of the property. The package that we submitted back in 2022 had a 13 or 14 page letter opinion from an attorney who focuses his practice on condemnation cases, both for governmental entities and representing property owners on the other side of the V. It's all it's statutory. You clearly have the power to do it. If there is a dispute, it's over what is the fair market value. And there's a process to play that out. It would be bold, it would be very, strong action, brave action by you. And you took brave action on the EIT. In the face of a lot of public opposition. I think you'd have huge public support for something like this. I'd ask you to, let's say, consider putting this, on an agenda, and then consider a public survey. Ask, would you be willing to pay some more in taxes to preserve that, to have that kind of a town center? Talked about trails in remote places, one intersection, a couple 100,000 there. This would be a gathering point for the whole township. That comprehensive plan talked about the needs for parking in Berwick. You could have 20 or 30 extra parking places that would be available for the public. You could make some little revenue from it. I realize this may be coming out of left field late at night after you've been dealing with a lot of numbers and whatever. We had gotten some estimates from the folks who do the bond work. I think they still do, what is it, PFM Financial. Numbers are out of date, interest rates are higher, obviously. We had estimates, we had 2 appraisals from different appraisers who would value the property around 6 million at that time. Not chump change, obviously. A bond for 20, 30 years might be a $400,000 carrying charge. We have, revenue, we're talking about reserves, you have charges, put this into the hopper. I think it'd be, something you could look back on 50 years, your kids, your grandkids, and see, like Central Park in New York. like Fairmount Park, it would be a real landmark. Like the arch, the ballroom, it'd be a real deal. So anyway, thanks for what you do, thanks for listening to me at this late hour. Just say we have these packets, they're a little out of date. I'd be happy to drop off a bunch of them. Didn't bring 5 or 6 with me here to see them. We hope to see this on a future agenda. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I actually have one.
I got one.
Yeah.
Great. I'll take one.
Thanks. Yeah, we have to see some more. Good to see you.
All right, so upcoming meetings and events. Website.
Yeah, we're potentially targeting exec session. The perspective
To discuss legal and personnel.
Topics are
Real estate
real estate
matters.
and person.
Real estate personnel. Motion to adjourn.
Second. Thanks, Jeff.